Hey everybody, it's me, Stacey, licensed designer for Sizzix, Jacquard, Couture Creations, and brand ambassador for Royal Talents. Hello everybody. Hello, welcome to our first week of June with In the Studio with Stacey. Hey! I can't believe it's already June. We started In the Studio with Stacey classes back in January, and each month it is a series of classes. So I pick one product from the fine art world because we're the paper crafting world. And so I try to pick one product, one type of product from the fine art world, and then I bring it into our paper crafting world to show you how using product from both really makes magic happen. Absolutely. So January we did Ecoline markers, and February we did February we did Amsterdam acrylics. March we did Van Gogh watercolors, and April we did soft pastels. And for the entire month of May, we worked with pencils, colored pencils, watercolored pencils. We even played with artist crayons. So each Tuesday, I share with you different ways to use the product. And you may find that the first Tuesday, well, that's today, and I do have an unusual product for you, at least from our paper crafting world. You may find that the first Tuesday you're like, meh, and the second Tuesday you're like, well, I like what she did, but meh. It may be the third Tuesday where you're like, oh, that technique is for me, because giving you the opportunity to see many different ways of how a single type of product is used while teaching you about that product, the backstory of it, the history of it. Well, that's what these classes are really meant to be. Kind of a mini paper crafting art class. Now, understand that I am not an artist. I'm not a fine artist. I'm not educated in fine art. I don't even think I took art in high school. I don't remember. But I've always been a color outside the lines kind of girl, so maybe that was best. So everything that I say here is from my learnings, my spending time and taking classes with Royal Talents, and spending time with my mentor, Jeff, who guides me through all of this and really shares his passion and his knowledge. He is an art professor. I mean, I am the first paper crafter to ever be an art or brand ambassador for Royal Talents. So with that comes this huge responsibility to make sure that I bring you product that is understandable and that you can then take and use in your paper crafting to elevate it. Because quite frequently, like today, the product from the fine art world is a better quality than we have in our paper crafting world, and often the price is less. And that is the case today. The price is less. It is a phenomenal. So we are playing with gouache today. Let's all say that together. Gouache. It is pronounced go wash, gouache. I always rhyme it with squash. Squash, squash, then I remember how to say it. So in our first class of the month, it usually is an overview. It's telling you a little bit about the history and the composition and why it is, what it is, how it is, and swatching out and showing you the different properties. And then the subsequent weeks to follow, that's when we get into the makes. But if you don't understand the product you're working with, you're never going to be able to use it to its fullest abilities. Now, do we have this product for sale? Yes, of course we do. But if you have a local independent art store, I so encourage you to walk in and say, hey, I just heard a little bit about gouache. Somebody just taught me some things about gouache. Do you have any here in the store? And by all means, support them. All independent mom and pop shop needs your help. And so while we are absolutely a for-profit business, I have to make payroll every Friday. It is so important to me that we support all of the independent stores out there. So if you've got a local art store, tell them Stacey said hi. They won't know who I am, but that's okay. I still want to say hi. So today it is gouache. And you may have never heard of gouache before. I certainly wasn't overly familiar with gouache. I had seen it. I wasn't even 100% sure how to pronounce it. But I had no idea what it was. And through my teachings with Jeff and taking classes, I have got a much better understanding of what this product is and how you are going to want to use it. Now, am I an art professor? No, I am not. Am I an artist? Well, kind of. I'm a paper crafter, so whatever I create is my art. But no, I've never taken any classes in art, and so I'm coming from a paper crafter's view. And I think that's why Royal Talons, why I am a brand ambassador for them, because as a paper crafter, I see their products completely differently than an artist would, a fine artist. Not that there's anything bad or good about the difference, it's just a different perspective. And that's how I come to all the products that I bring to you in our month-long class. And so week 1 is all about the history and playing a little bit. Week 2, I may show you a technique to use with it, and you're like, yeah, no, I'm still okay with that. But it's fun to live chat because we live chat during the premieres. It may be week 3 or maybe even week 4 before you say, oh, that technique, I want to do that, sign me up. So having that availability to work week after week with the same product, building your confidence in the product, building your crafty arsenal on how you would use the product is what In the Studio with Stacey is all about. So, gouache. Again, I rhyme it with squash. Squash, gouache, that's how I remember how to pronounce it. It is a sister to watercolors. So if you love watercolor, and we did Van Gogh watercolor, it is a sister to watercolors. It is a pigment-based product, pigment-based mixed with a binder, just like a watercolor. Mixed with a binder, and that binder is what helps it set to the paper that you are working on. It has the same shared history as watercolor. So it goes all the way back to prehistoric times, all the way back. Gouache has been around. Now, it probably wasn't called gouache. I'm pretty sure in the prehistoric times there might have been a grunt or two, but it wasn't called gouache. But it evolved into the Egyptian times on papyrus paper. I have papyrus paper. I've been to Egypt, so I actually watched them do it. I helped make the paper. Yes, I got suckered into the tourist trap, but it's okay. I had a great time. In the 18th century, it became a little bit more known, absolutely. And in the 19th century is where it started to be used by mixing it in with other mediums. So they weren't just using gouache by itself. They were mixing it in with other mediums. In the 20th century is when it had its moment. Gouache became readily acceptable by artists. It has a matte finish. It is smooth. It is beautiful. It then became more accepted by artists in the 20th century, and that's where it really has taken hold. That non-glare finish. It's just lovely. But what is it? Well, being that it's a pigment-based product, it has the pigment, it has the binder. But what size is that pigment particle? What size is that pigment particle? That's something that's super important with gouache. That makes it a sister to watercolor. Where watercolor, that pigment is ground as fine as could be. With gouache, the pigment base, the pigment size is a little bit bigger, making it more opaque. It is an opaque watercolor. Now, we learned how to make opaque watercolors back in March when we did Van Gogh. Watercolor, when you're using watercolors, the only way to make it opaque is to use white. We used white and black to darken up and to make opaque. That white watercolor added to a traditional watercolor will change the chemical composition of that watercolor, allowing it to be opaque. Gouache already has that done, ready to go, and in beautiful colors. So it is an opaque watercolor. Now, there are other types of watercolors. So there are, in fact, I have the Angora line here. This is beautiful. Aren't those colors, are those dreamy? I mean, really. This is an opaque watercolor, but it's not made the same. This is made with an opacifier. So built into each of these colors is an opacifier that changes that beautiful transparency of a watercolor into something a little bit more opaque. So opacifiers have been used with watercolors for quite some time. Generally, this type of a product is maybe a more student, absolutely more student grade, really more student, because you're talking about the ratio, again, pigment to binder to opacifier. And so the pigment is usually a little bit less in something like this, unlike gouache. Gouache doesn't have opacifiers like that. They're done completely different, and it's done with the size of the particle in the pigment inside the paint. It is beautiful and different, and I'm going to show you both of them. So that's how you spell it, gouache. And it sits more on top of the paper than absorb into the paper. So a little bit different than a watercolor that way. It also works differently when it's a wet on wet, and you don't use as much water when you are playing with these. You want that opacity. I'm so proud of myself. Opacity and opacifier. I'm really proud of myself with those words. Takes me a long time I'm dyslexic, so my brain struggles with it. But the opacity in a gouache is completely different than that in a watercolor, and you have to see it to understand it. You do, and you just do. We'll get into color change and how dark colors tend to dry light and light colors tend to dry dark, which is a little different. But I think I'm gonna tilt on down, and I think we're gonna get started, because I do wanna show you, I wanna do some swatching, but I also think I wanna just, I'm gonna grab a piece of paper. I wanna just show you kind of an explanation, I mean, a very basic explanation of the difference between a watercolor and a gouache. So it's me, Stacey. This is our In the Studio with Stacey, and I hope you enjoy it. We're here every Tuesday, so I this whole month is going to be a really great time. I just know it. All right, I'm going to tilt down and we're going to get started. It's good to see everybody. Hello, hello. So let's zoom on in. I am my own camera person. All right, so I just have a plain piece of paper here because I do want to talk to you a little bit about watercolor. Nope. Try again. There. Watercolor versus our gouache. So watercolor, let's pretend that this is our watercolor, and watercolor is made up of lots of fine pigments, Whole thing's just filled up with fine pigment that makes the color. And in between those pigments is the binder that lets you hold everything together. So I can just dot this whole thing up, and that's the pigment of my color. So this is a drop of watercolor. Then we have, so a drop of watercolor. Then we have our gouache. Same drop. The difference is, instead of being dots to represent our pigment, because we want that pigment as fine as it can be, because we want that transparency. The finer the pigment is ground, the more transparent it's going to be. Gouache, those same pigments are bigger. In fact, they're so big, the particles are as big as the binder will still hold to them. So we want those particles to be as big. So we're looking at a drop of our paint. So if you can imagine watercolor here, super fine pigment mixed with binder, versus a drop of gouache here. The pigment is now 10, 15, 100 times the size of what this was over here. And because the pigment size is bigger, it is more opaque. Now, we're not trying to put a pacifier in here, I hope I'm saying that right, to help seal, to make it more opaque. We're letting the pigment itself do the work by the size of the pigment. The bigger the pigment, the more opaque it's going to be. The smaller the pigment, the more transparent it's going to be. So gouache is like taking your red watercolor, mixing it with some white to make it, I'm not going to spell it right, but to make it opaque. Is that right? So your red watercolor mixed with white watercolor to make an opaque color. Gouache is already done for you. Your Angora, and I love these colors, so we're going to have these for sale because I think they're absolutely beautiful. Your Angora has pigment based in them. It has a binder based in them, but it also has an opacifier based into it. And that opacifier is what makes this an opaque color. But is it going to be as opaque as true gouache? Well, we're going to see that. That's what we're going to learn today. And this is the Talons Art Creations brand. Is this the highest level of gouache out there? No. Royal Talons sells a higher level, a fine artist's grade, and that will be reflected in the price. Now, I've played with both of them, and I played with the highest level. I thought about it, and I thought, you know what? I think for what we do, this is worlds different and better than this, although these are beautiful as watercolors. And I don't think we needed to have that top quality gouache for what we're going to do, what we're going to play with. I recommend, and let me just be honest with you. Like this set right here, there's 24 colors. It retails for, I want to say, about $25. Really, it does. I mean, it's an incredible value. And I think that starting with a $25 set, and then you find that it's something you want to do more of, then you go and buy the higher premium quality gouache. But this is an opaque color, an opaque watercolor made in Germany, but not true gouache. It has that opacifier built into it to give that opacity, to change the opacity from transparent to a little more opaque. So we'll play with both, but I think the best way to understand it is kind of like a science project. It's all about the particles. It's all about the how the particles bind with the, or combined with the binder, and whether that binder can hold the largest particles, because if it can, the larger the particle, the more opaque. So it's going to give us a beautiful flat matte finish, and I think you're going to love it. Now I'm going to pull out the colors in the 24 pack, and they're beautiful. I think the one reason why you have gouache is because you want to do watercoloring. You want to have some of it opaque. You want to have the brush strokes, and you want to have the leaves, and you want to have something a little bit solid in there. And while you can blend it yourself, it's always hard to blend it a second time. So if I've done this, and I only blended this much of my red, the minute I'm out of it, well, then I have to blend again, and I have to match the color. I have to be sure that I use the exact same amount of red watercolor and the exact same amount of white watercolor. To equal my opaque. And if I add more here and less here, it's not going to match what I did over here. So I think gouache really came out and became popular from the convenience aspect of it, because it is already blended for you. Will these colors blend together? Oh, you bet. In fact, they blend even a little bit better because that pigment particle size is larger. There's lots that can be done with it, and there's things that it does better than a traditional watercolor because the composition of it is different. So I'm going to play on white and black today because it does sit on top of my paper, and therefore I can play in black. I'm using watercolor paper, the right paper for the right job. You can use the mixed media paper, absolutely, but today I'm going to play in watercolor. And let's swatch some of this off. All right, so I think that's okay. That gives me a couple colors to do. And then I think I'm going to come there and there. So we can do 5 colors. So I think that's good. Now, flat brushes are what I'm going to be using today, and I do have my little inexpensive palette here. I've also got my wipeable palette, and I'm not sure which one I'm going to use. This is my throwaway palette, my tear-off palette. I'm not sure which one I'm going to use today, so I brought them both out because I wasn't 100% sure. And I think I'm just going to start with a little bit of a couple colors. Now the colors really are magnificent, and it is in the tubes. Oh, they're dreamy. I think I'm going to start here, and I might go here, and maybe there. there and there. I don't know, we'll see. We'll see what we've got. But the colors are absolutely gorgeous. I've got some water with me. And with gouache, it's not about using a lot of water, it's about using just enough water. So just enough. So if I do 1, 2, 3, maybe I'll go down. Let's pull my yellow. So a little bit of my yellow. And I've got some water on my brush. Again, I don't want my brush to be so wet. In fact, you can use even a dry brush with gouache. I want it to be wet enough, but not so wet that it dilutes my color. Okay, so you can see right away that it's definitely different than a traditional watercolor. Definitely different. Now, if I let this dry, this is going to dry lighter than when it goes down. And the lighter colors are going to dry a little darker. So I can let this dry and layer on another color. I can go ahead and come in and put a lighter layer over the top just to get even that slightly more opaque look. But just like a watercolor, best thing to do is to let it completely dry before you layer your next color. Now I've got my little bit of here. And I'm going to take a little bit of water, just a little bit of water. I'm going to put a little bit of water in my little palette here. And I'm going to grab a little bit of that water and a little bit of my gouache. And by adding that water, I'm going to dilute the color down. So you can readily see that by adding water, you're diluting that color down, which is perfectly fine. You're turning it into more of a traditional watercolor. The more water I use, the more it's diluted. And then come in and really dilute it down. So that's really diluted down. And we'll see what we end up with. Now it's going to take that a little time to dry, but I want a little bit better coverage. Oh, I still have some in there. So I've dried my brush off again. Almost to a dry paint. I want my brush just wet enough to move it around. But you can see the difference. Now I could go a little darker here if I wanted, but the idea of gouache is to remain and have that opaque type look if that's what you're going for. It's the easiest way to get it, as opposed to mixing yourself. And you see how it's sitting more on top of the paper than absorbing into the paper. So if I want to make this maybe just a little darker. But every time you add water, you're changing the composition of the pigment, the size of the pigment. So this was straight color, a little bit of water, a lot of water. Let's do another color. So I just want my brush wet enough to pick up the color. See, look at how beautiful is that. And a little dab will do you. You don't want to put too much in your palette. This is watercolor. This is not an acrylic. Look at how beautiful that color is. And then we'll add, well, we'll put a little more in and add a little bit of water. And then we'll add a lot of water. A little dab will do ya. Little drop of water, just now. Will these blend? Oh, you bet they will. We'll do that in just a minute. And then let's add a little drop of water. So if these dry in my palette over here, can I re-energize them? I think you can. And as the color is drying, it's going to matte finish. Okay, let's add another color. Look at how beautiful is this. So if you want to mix your watercolors with your gouache, absolutely. Maybe you start with a gouache type background and watercolor on top, but you're going to be able to blend everything into everything. And then a little bit of water. Just so you can see that you can dilute it down, but it does change. It does change the paint. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Look at how beautiful. With a watercolor. With a gouache, a sister to a watercolor that has that strong saturated pigment base and those particles as big as Royal Talents could get them, and the binder still holds to them so that it will still set onto your paper. And we'll add a little bit of water. And see what we get. And see how it dries. Oh, I stuck my finger in that one, but that's okay. You can already see how the yellow and this beautiful, this color is gorgeous, magenta, is drying with that beautiful matte finish. And then let's do our last one. So I want my paintbrush a little wet, but not so wet. I didn't put any water in my palette at all. And as it dries, in fact, I'm going to pick this one up so you can see it. As it dries, especially on the blue, I don't know if you can see it, it's dry here where it's lighter and it's darker here. So as it dries to a lighter color. And the darker dries lighter, the lighter dries darker. It's a unique property. So you can absolutely layer color. And this time I'm going to add a little bit of water to it. Just a good drop. There we go. And that's going to change the opacity of this, of the paint. And then I can add a little bit more water. Oh, that might even be too much water. All right, and we'll let these dry. Now, watercolor can't necessarily do this on black paper, but gouache can. if you change the opacity of your colors, your watercolors, with your white to make it opaque, then you can achieve this. But gouache makes it easier and is so affordable. And yes, the colors will blend. So I'm going to put this to the side for just a minute. And I'm going to bring over the Angora. Now the Angora is not a traditional or true gouache. It is a opaque watercolor that's done with an opacifier built in. It is the colors are lovely, which is why I brought it in, even though it's not a true gouache. The colors are just beautiful, but I do want you to get a feel of what we're looking at. So I'm going to pick some of the colors that are close to what I have, and I'm just going to put some water in there because I need to get it moving. So I did a blue, maybe that blue. See, and look at how this blue is drying. Isn't that, it went on so different. But look at that, the colors are magnificent. So purple and so I just want you to see the difference. So I'm going to load my brush. And I want to use as little water as possible, but it is a world of difference. Even though these are going to dry with a matte finish and an opaque type of look, I'm going to have to use a lot of this to get anywhere near what I had with my gouache. It's just not there. It's going to dry. See, and you can see it kind of drying a little chalky. That is not this. Now there's a place for this, absolutely, which is why this is a very student grade kind of watercolory paint. But this is magnificent. And without seeing the difference, without showing you the difference, being fair and saying, okay, side-by-side comparison, not that there is anything wrong with this product, it's just different. So if you see, and this is the Angora, and it is beautiful. In fact, I understand it's like the best-selling product for Royal Talons, but it's not the same as a true gouache. And you can see that now for yourself. So I'm going to put that to the side for just a minute, and let's bring out some white paper. And let's swatch some white. So what did I do? I went 4. So 1, 2. Move this off to the side. 3, 4, and then 1, 2. Can you use gouache on white paper? Yes, absolutely you can. So bring my palette back and start with my yellow and put a little bit in there. It's pretty much dried up right now. I'm just going to put a little bit in there, not add any water. My paintbrush, I want it not dry, but I don't want it wet either. So look at that color on white. And then we can mix a little bit of water in. And mix a little water in. So we start to get the different shades. True Gouache is up here. Then we did our magenta. Look at that color. So pretty. But let's add a little bit of water. And let's add a little bit of water. And away we go. Let's move to our next color. And there we did here, so a little bit there. So it's not an acrylic paint. This isn't something that is going to dry on metal and plastic and glass like it would if it were an acrylic paint. An acrylic paint, once it's dry, it becomes permanent. This is a sister to a watercolor, so when it dries, it will be reactive unless we use some Dorland's wax to set it. But I love the colors, and I love that they become opaque. The opacity of it in its true gouache form is beautiful. But if you've never heard of gouache before, well, this is all new. I got quite a bit of water in there. Let's see if I can pick it up without too much water. Look at that color. Now when it dries, it's going to dry to a lighter shade of. And if you want to darken the color, you come back and you add another layer. So now I've truly made a watercolor paint down at this bottom. Oodles of water in this one. And then our last color. So it's taking that highly pigmented watercolor and keeping the particles of that pigment bigger, chunkier, kind of like a detailed embossing powder versus a regular embossing powder. where that detail embossing powder will hold on to every nook and cranny, and that bigger embossing powder, although it may be the same, it all starts out as the same, because it's chunkier, it spreads more. Because this is a fatter particle, it is more opaque. And how diluted you make it will change the opacity. So we have on white, and you can see from opaque all the way down to translucent. Opaque at the top, true gouache. Beautiful, right? And it will play like a watercolor in certain instances. So, you know, with watercolor, we did the wet on wet and wet on damp and wet on dry, and we did it all. Well, you can do the same here, but you'll see that they behave differently. So if I bring over, let's bring over my brush, and let's open the Angora, which act a little bit more like a true watercolor. Okay, I've got that purple going pretty good. So let's put down some wet on wet so you can see the difference. So I'm getting my paper wet first. You're like, you're getting your paper wet? Yes. Because I want to lay down some of the Angora opaque watercolor. And you see what's happening? See it spread? See it move and grow? It's going to behave much more like a true watercolor, and you gotta let the color do its thing. You gotta let it do its thing. And kind of just let it be. But you see how it kind of moves and spreads, and as we let it sit, it will grow into each other. Gouache behaves a little differently. So I'm going to wipe some of these out so I don't have so much water going on. And let's grab my yellow. I started with purple, so maybe we'll start with purple. A little bit of purple, a little bit of magenta, and a little bit of yellow. And you can see these are moving around and blending into each other, and let's get my paper wet. pick up some of my purple. And you're going to see that it's not moving nearly as much, which means that if you are working with a traditional watercolor and you're working with gouache, you can go in there while you have wet on wet, and you can come in to paint on top of that wet on wet using both, knowing that your gouache is going to sit and not move, because maybe you need it to sit and not move. Maybe you're trying to color in something a little more solid. Maybe you're trying to add a little bit of some definition to things. My paper is wet, and it will spread a little, but it behaves completely differently than its sister, the traditional watercolor. That means you can use them both together to achieve the result you want. You can go in and paint with the gouache and then come back in with your watercolor and add in, or so you start with your watercolor and come back in with your gouache to add those detail lines, to add that fine color that you're looking for. Sisters like to hang together, right? Well, watercolor and gouache, they like to hang together. A completely different product, not because the pigment is different, because the size of the pigment is different. And I think that this is a really good way to show that to you. Now here's our Angora dried, and it does have an opaque look to it, kind of a chalky look to it on watercolor paper. But here's the gouache on watercolor paper. Look at the difference between the two. They are not the same. That doesn't make one better than the other. It makes it different. This is an opaque watercolor. This is a true gouache. And the idea behind it is that you can take and you can mix and you can blend. Will they blend together? Oh, howdy, will they? Scissors, please. Will they blend together? Yes. In fact, some of the things they do even better than a traditional watercolor because of the size of the pigment, because the size of the particles. So let's go there. Let's get my paintbrush just a little bit wet. Load my brush. Will they work with a soft pastel? Yes, they will. Okay, so there's one color. Oh no, I'm gonna need more than that. You can already see it trying to dry. Can I stamp on top of it? Yes. And I put my finger in it. But look as it dries, look at the color that's coming up. On black. And if I let this dry and I want the colors to be darker, I go back in. That's going to drive me crazy that I put my finger in it. Oh, now I've got some yellow going on in there. I didn't clean my brush. Ah, Stacey. Sometimes you should just leave well enough alone. No, that was my pink. I didn't use purple. I made purple. See, I can go back in and add more, and look at that, color's coming up vibrant. Look at how beautiful that is. It is easy to use. It is affordable. I want to say the 24 colors is like $25. And you can blend them for a completely opaque look. And the more water you add, the more it turns into more of a traditional watercolor. I'm just going to let that dry and see what we end up with. So gouache, it's a sister to a watercolor. It gives you the opportunity to play without having it move as much as it would a traditional watercolor. It gives you the opportunity to play without being as transparent as a traditional watercolor, which means you can now mix the two worlds together to add your detail, to start your backgrounds, to put in the shadows and really just incorporate them into your watercoloring. It becomes second nature to grab your gouache at the same time you're grabbing your watercolor, because it makes your opaque for you. So we have opaque all the way across the top, and then I diluted, and then I diluted, so you can see the difference. Solid gouache across the top, and then a little diluted, and then diluted. So on the white, it's less of a difference, but on the black, it is a sizable difference. And not to be confused with an opaque color. This has an opacifier in it. If it says gouache, that's different. And there's nothing wrong with these. They're beautiful. They do a beautiful job. The colors are so pretty. But are they this? No. Will they ever be this? No. To do this, you need this. So today is just a starting, just to get you familiar with even the term gouache. Anybody see my lid? Oh, Stacey, Stacey, Stacey. All right, well, it's got to be here somewhere, right? We'll not worry about it until I can't find it. But it's got to be here somewhere, right? Okay, I get so excited that I never put things back where they belong. So this is what we're going to be playing with the whole month, and doing different techniques using it, and how we can incorporate it with watercoloring. I think it's going to be a super fun, super exciting month, and I do hope you agree. Oh, it's going to drive me crazy that I don't know where this lid is. I know you're like, let it go, Stacey. I'm trying, but it's hard. I just want to put it at least in there so we don't lose it. We have gouache in 2 different sizes. We have the 12. I think it's going to run maybe $13, $14. Gives you your basic colors. Absolutely can be blended without question. And then I've got the set that I was using today. And again, I think the price is going to be somewhere around $25, maybe a little bit less. And you will pull these and you will use these because they are easy and lovely to use. And they give you opportunity. And they dry with that matte finish. Now, these are water reactive. Oh, this will break my heart. I don't want to do it. Oh, it'll break my heart. Do I have something else down here? Okay, I have some of these. I can play with these. Okay, this will break my heart. I don't want to break my heart. So, me just playing with color. Oh, but did I? I don't know. Okay, we're going to see. So, if I want to make sure that I set them, I'm going to use some Dorland's wax because they are sister to a watercolor, so they are water reactive. So a little Dorland's wax over the top will protect it. And when that dries, it doesn't change the color. When that dries, you won't be able to do this. So that's water reactive. And I'm able to just get it wet and reactivate it and start moving it around. I don't want that. Let's see if I can get... I want that. See that water? That's what I want. I don't want it to react. I want that water to be a resist, so that I don't accidentally get it wet and move all my paint. Now you know why I didn't want to do these, because I'd have to ruin one of these. I didn't want to do that. See, Mom, look, no mess. Because that Dorland's wax has sealed. So you want Dorland's wax for anything that's water reactive. If you want to make sure that you set the color, we probably could even do it on this one. This is the Angora. We'll see if it dries, if it changes back to its normal color. I don't know, maybe with the Angora, it just wiped the color away. Because if I take my water, it turns right back into a paint again. I'm gonna have to let that dry and see what color it comes back to. But definitely with the gouache, because you've got enough pigment in there. It saves the color, and that way you're not just wiping it away if you get it wet. Yeah, I'm not going to do it on this. Sorry, guys. I think this is too pretty. We're going to matte this on something. So this is our beginning. We had to start at the beginning, and the beginning is the very best place to start. Now you have a better understanding of what gouache is and why you would want gouache. To achieve this type of opacity with a watercolor is going to be difficult. You may be able to achieve it by adding enough white in, but then if you need to continue, mixing that color again is going to be a little more challenging. The ease and convenience of this is well worth it because they will play with all of your watercolors. And yes, you can even mix this into your watercolors. Absolutely. I love how they look. I love how they behave. Yeah, I don't think on the Angora you want to do the Dorland's. I think it's just going to take that color right on off. Nope, maybe not. I love that they sit on top as opposed to glide around, giving you the availability to play between the two, to have something that doesn't move with wet while you're working in wet. Yay! All right, so I showed you the sizes that we have. Of course, we have the watercolor paper for you without question. We have the two sizes, or the 2 packs here of the Van Gogh. This is the 25 pack. We have them on sale for, I think, 50% off because this is discontinued. But then, of course, we've got the larger size and then Van Gogh. It'll all be part of the sale, no problem. You may already have it. I'm hoping you do. You might need the little palette. I'm hoping you have it. You might already have it. And then all of our Fusion brushes are now sold in the sets and open stock. And with you may find that you like your flats better with the gouache. You need to work a little bit quicker. You need to move it and get it down. And you may find that a flat is easier. But of course, if you're doing detail work with it, then your rounds are going to come into play. And we now have all of our Fusion watercolor brushes sold open stock in any size. So I think there's 5 sizes of the rounds and 4 sizes of the flats, and then we also have them in sets. I think that you're going to find that you're going to really enjoy having gouache as part of your crafty arsenal, especially for the price. Playing with darker tonal paper, mixing it with your soft pastels, mixing it with your watercolors, whomever's watercolors you have, they're going to work well in. I think you're going to find that what we do with these is fun and inventive and easy and hopefully affordable. So this is In the Studio with Stacey. This is the first week in June, class number 1. I hope that I was able to kind of give you an overview of what gouache is, because it's not something that we necessarily use, have thought about, heard about in the paper crafting world. But like I said when I started, sometimes the product from the fine art world is so good, and yet the pricing, I look at it and I go, how do they do that? Well, because it's not necessarily coming from our paper crafting world. So I leave it to you. I'll be back next week, same time, same place, same bat channel. We live chat during the premiere, which is always 6 p.m. sunny California time, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. And next week I will be doing something new with the gouache. We'll add something to it. We'll do something to it. We'll maybe stencil with it or stamp with it, or we'll figure out something fun to do each of the following Tuesdays for the rest of June. I hope you join me, and the next time you see me will be Thursday for our new For You event here at Scrapbooking Made Simple. And I've got, at the same time, same place, same bat channel, live chatting going on, and I've got the latest and greatest from some of your most favorite manufacturers, all value priced from the start. So until then, everybody, again, it's me, Stacey. I'm a licensed designer for Sizzix, Jacquard Couture Creations, and a brand ambassador for Royal Talons. Until later, bye everybody.